And welcome back to Sleepwell Horrors. I changed the name a bit. Added another word because it was getting confused with sleeping music. And we don't want that. All right, we're doing scary stories here. Today we're doing the last part of the 911 series that I've been reading called We Were 911 Operators. I don't know what we are anymore. And that's part 4 by fake_bra on Reddit. And they post to r/no sleep. Go check them out in the links below. They have stories on there as well that are not just these ones. And they're a great writer. So without me drawing us out too long, let's get to the video. Okay, so this is part 4, the final part of this. We're going to get some answers. And this part's called We Were 911 Operators. I don't know what we are anymore. Right, so that black goo is probably going to play a big role in this. I'll start us off. An excruciatingly long day full of fear and anxiety passed before we heard back from Rebecca. She had messaged us asking to meet in person after we described our situation in detail, but warned us in advance that she did not know how helpful she would be. Drive to the address had given us was about an hour and a half away, in Augusta. This is in Georgia, where she had a small apartment she was staying at currently. Connor and I walked to the hotel to find my car still there, but his had disappeared. Told you the car would come back up. We kept an eye on our wounds and bruises, unsure of what they actually were, and if they could spread. We were relieved to see they still hadn't. I'd like to say we discussed theories and possible reasons why this has happened. Anything we tried finding regarding the missing police officers who responded to the call that night online was met with old articles that coincidentally had some of the same keywords I'd used in my search. There's nothing on the news either. It was as if nothing had happened at all.
We arrived in Augusta a little after noon and turned from the main street to town into another narrow road that led to Rebecca's neighborhood. We climbed up the 3rd floor and rang her bell, footsteps approaching the door a few moments later and stopping, presumably looking through the large peephole before she opened the door to greet us. What we saw in person was a woman slightly older than the one on the website, so I assume the photo must have been taken some years ago.
Good afternoon. I assume you're Marielle and Connor?
She pushed the door open fully now and looked at me first, then at him.
Yes, thank you for having us, Miss Simmons. We're not sure we can even turn to about this.
Connor nodded and then brought his head down slightly as if admitting defeat.
Nobody. I hate to tell you, you're not the first to come to me about something like this, but you're probably the only ones to have.
She seemed hesitant to finish her sentence, but did so after a brief pause.
That doesn't make any sense. You're not the first to come to me about something like this, but you're probably the only ones to have.
Survived.
Oh, shit! Start over. Damn it! Nobody, I hate to tell you, you're not the first to come to me about something like this, but you're probably the only ones to have
She
survived.
seemed a bit... Oh. Sorry.
Okay, well, I gotta read that again now. Okay. Nobody, I hate to tell you, you're not the first to come to me about something like this, but you're probably the only ones to have survived.
Connor and I turned to meet our eyes, and Rebecca invited us in, apologizing for saying what she did, and shut the door behind us once we'd entered. She went to make us coffee while we took our shoes and jackets off and made ourselves comfortable in her living room, and I tried taking some of the stress off by petting her puppy, a French bulldog that couldn't have been older than a few months.
They allow pets in the building?
I tried initiating small talk when she came back to set a friendlier tone before we got to what we were really here for.
You could say that. Honestly, the owner is against animals of any kind in the apartments, but I convinced him now little trouble he'd cause, and that if he broke or damaged anything, I'd pay back in full. Isn't that right, Frankie?
In response, Frankie mustered up a semi-bark and licked her hand as she went to pet his head and then sat down on the opposite side of the sofa Connor and I were on a small cushioned chair.
I know who you are, Marielle.
I must admit that phrase almost sent me into a fight or flight, considering I've been on edge, to say the least, for the past little over 2 days, and was ready to jump up and run out of the apartment. But she continued just in time to allow me to prevent myself from doing so.
Your husband contacted me a year ago, trying to find out more about the mirror world and the creatures inhabiting it. I'm sorry to hear what happened and that you had to relive it by writing it in the email.
Her mentioning my ex-husband's death was a gut punch, as I still hadn't even processed it over the weight of everything that's happened, and I stared blankly at her. Connor noticed and took over the conversation for me.
Did he mention anything we might need to know? Why was he trying to break into Mariel's home?
Rebecca took a sip of her coffee, which still had steam coming off of it, and switched her gaze to me, picking up Frankie off the floor once he jumped off as soon as I stopped petting him. Obviously completely disinterested in me now, and set him on her lap.
Because he was afraid of exactly what is happening to you. I can't put this any other way, so I'll be forward about it. Russell did not seem exactly in his right mind. Even back then, he was talking about all kinds of theories and supposed discoveries he had made that sounded like the ravings of a madman. But what was evident to me was his duty to protect you from it, Marielle. I assume that's why he was there that night, but he was unlucky enough to encounter something that only appeared to be you.
Both Connor and I were at a loss for words at how casually this woman seemed to be talking about it, as if it was an everyday occurrence that some body snatchers who apparently lived in your damn mirror or something like that took over your life and pretended to be you. But that didn't stop her from continuing.
Admittedly, though, he was one of the few to have actually come to me with more than just claims of there being another version of them. So what the hell are these things? Why are they targeting us?
Connor said, not even having touched his coffee yet. Not that I had either.
I don't know for sure how they choose their hosts, as I call them, but from what Russell and others before and after him have told me is that they form when you feel lost for an extended period in your life, like when a piece of you seems to be missing. Is that description accurate for you after your divorce, Marielle?
Part of me was getting more and more furious at how confidently this woman was trying to gouge the low point in my life, but I could not bring myself to go against her when everything she'd been saying so far was correct. It didn't help that she sounded so confident. Well, maybe it did, because we were finally talking to somebody who not only believed us, but seemed experienced in the topic at hand.
It does, and I guess the same goes for Russell. He started talking about all of this a month after his father passed in a tragic work accident. I thought he was just taking the loss really bad, but my God.
I took a moment to think about everything through and allowed myself to finally take a sip from the coffee Rebecca made me before continuing.
You said he made some kind of discovery when he'd come to you? What were you talking about? Well, I don't know if your husband had ever come in contact with any of them, but according to him, the only way to sever these beings' connection to you was to destroy them in their world. I'll be honest that I was up until very recently skeptical about this existence as a whole, considering no one had ever actually been to it or at least done that and returned to tell the tale. But here you two are, and you have evidence.
She held her hand up to her ribcage while also looking at my ankle, referring to the dark marks Connor and I had. I'm sure he felt as unnerved as I did at the mention of them.
And what do these markings mean? Do you know?
Connor joined in.
My theory is that it's this other reality's way to manifest itself into our own. And I can't tell you what that means or how dangerous it may be, but I hope nobody has to find out.
She put Frankie back on the ground, and he tried to get her attention again by scratching on her left leg for a second before making a sound like an angry toddler and curling up by her feet. Then Rebecca leaned on her knees, and her eyes darted from Connor's to mine and back.
I know that this will sound like suicide, but you were already there once. You twice even, Connor, and you both managed to escape. In all my time following this phenomenon, I've not heard of or met anyone to have done that. I'd say that it's your decision if you want to do this, but with those marks you have, I'm not sure if you have any choice in the matter if you want to stay. You must go back and destroy your imposters before they claim you.
I don't have to explain how hard my stomach dropped as we were instructed to go back into that damn maze that took the form of my home. But at the same time, there was no other solution we can think of, and I am sure it had been floating around Connor's head as much as it had been in mine recently.
But how do we even go about doing it? We don't know what they even are. How are we supposed to fight them?
My voice trembled at the mention of a confrontation with them.
We don't call them mirror people just because we came up with it randomly, Marielle. You came out of that world through your mirror, so you see, they are trying to become you slowly. So
Rebecca stood up and walked over to one of the walls of the apartment that had a large rectangular mirror on it.
my guess is that attacking them with the glass will be effective in hurting and potentially killing them. Your guess?
Connor stood up, and I felt the disbelief in his words as if they were my own.
You're telling us to enter whatever that place is again, most likely walking straight to our death, or God knows, maybe something even worse, and all you have to go off of is your guess?
She turned back to face him seemingly unaffected by his demeanor and crossed her arms before speaking.
As I said, I've never encountered one of them myself, and I'm only going off of what I've heard from people I've spoken to, both in person and through any forum. If it makes you feel better, I am more than willing to come with you. I've been investigating this for far too long, and I want to be able to help others in your situation if they ever come to find me. So, you're saying that this isn't just happening to me? It is a whole phenomenon? When was the first time something like this happened? I can't tell for sure, Marielle.
Rebecca shrugged and now turned her whole body to face us, and Connor shook his head while sitting down but remained silent.
But you're not the only one being haunted by yourself. You might realize now, though, why it's not a whispered threat. Ooh, okay, hold on. But you are not the only one being haunted by yourself. You might realize now why it's not a widespread threat. People who look for help from those not familiar with it end up ostracized or thrown in mental hospitals.
We stayed at Rebecca's apartment for another half an hour, going through Connor's and my experience in the mirror world, and then getting ready to leave and drive back to my house. It sounds just as insane as it did then typing this out. Our conversation on the drive back, with Connor in the driver's seat this time, was mostly filler or silence. As much as I didn't want to admit it because she was still helping us, Rebecca was not a great person to be around, and I can see why she'd be doing something out of the ordinary, considering how apathetic she seemed to people's emotions. And the second thing I was looking forward to the most after freeing myself of the other me's torment was not having to spend another second with her.
After she gave us some more information and theories about what had to... After she gave us some more information and theories about what we had to do, came to the conclusion that we had to get rid of mine and Connor's double in order to sever our link to this reality, or dimension, or how you want to call it. We decided that we would do our best to destroy those of the 2 policemen who disappeared in response to the call. If we found them, I'm sorry if this makes me sound like a bad person, but I was not ready to spend more time in that hell of a place trying to save someone I did not know, and I just wanted to be over already. I think Rebecca was the only one who, despite all her supposed experience, failed to realize that we were literally about to enter another dimension to fight beings that were nothing close to human when she urged to make it our goal to find them as well.
Wait, real quick. Had Rebecca been in the mirror before? She just studies. She just
No, she's
knows
never
about
been.
it. Okay.
Never been. She's just very pompous.
Okay.
That's how I read her. That's how I felt like she was. I felt like she was like too elegant.
Yeah.
Like you walk into her house and she's like, almost looks like Frankenstein's wife. What's her name? Not Frankenstein's wife.
Morticia?
Yeah, Morticia.
Yeah.
Yeah, Morticia. Not Frankenstein's wife. Just Morticia.
The Addams family.
Yeah, the Addams family.
Arriving at my driveway was just as chilling as before, the eeriness amplified by the police car still outside. On our way, we'd pass by a store to buy a medium-sized mirror that we broke in order to arm ourselves with shards of its glass, an idea suggested by Rebecca that I was not sure how it made me feel when you take into account the superstitions around the bad luck that will follow you when you break a mirror. She seemed to not care and was more than happy to shatter it without a second thought, of course, getting herself the longest and sharpest piece she could find and leaving us with the shorter ones. We explained to Rebecca that going up into the attic is what sent both Connor and me into the other world, and he was the first to go up the ladder, then Rebecca, and finally myself.
All 3 of us commented on the sudden chill and cold in the attic and then slowly descended back into the hallway to find nothing out of the ordinary until the first time a room repeated. But what was stranger than usual was how the super weird.
What happened? Oh, is it your light?
Yeah. That's weird.
You're like a ghost disappearing into your screen.
My light started flickering on and off. What was stranger than usual was how the distortions appeared almost instantaneously, with floating or missing furniture, misplaced windows, and the like. I can't believe I am actually seeing this myself.
For a change, this time Rebecca sounded like the one completely lost in the situation. I don't know about Connor, but it made me feel more in control, like I knew what to expect. Of course, I didn't.
Okay, don't cover it now. Okay, listen to me.
I tried to sound as confident as I could to grab their attention.
I have an idea. We can walk all we want and expect to find one of those things, or we can draw them to us. While I was here, when I made a noise, they came almost instantly. So let's devise a plan.
I looked around the room we were currently in. It was the kitchen, a perfect place for an ambush. I'd stay behind the counter by the window, looking towards the doorway, on either side of which Connor and Rebecca would wait with glass shards in their hands to stab them into whatever creature came first. They agreed to the plan and took their positions while I looked into one of the shelves floating in the middle of the air, inside of which were small glass cups, not behind on defying the laws of physics. Looking back at the others and raising the cup in the air, they nodded in approval, and I took a deep breath and braced myself, squeezing my shard in the other hand. Before I dropped the glass, I looked at the mark on my hand, which seemed to have grown to almost consume my entire palm. We had to get this done, or who knows who would follow us.
I simulated a pained yell, and I threw the glass onto the ground, and seconds later, the all too familiar static and distant voices started storming toward the kitchen from the other room. Turning the corner was a man in police uniform. I assume one of the two that unlikely enough to be sent as the responders. The night I got called took all the strength in me not to flinch, as it were up until now. Stiff movements turned into a feral sprint, accompanied by a reverberating inhuman growl.
The moment that thing appeared through the driveway, Connor and Rebecca were swift
Start
to
over.
stab.
Start over. You said
Why?
driveway. You said driveway.
Oh. The moment that thing appeared through the doorway, Connor and Rebecca were swift to stab their shards into its body. Connor managed to slice its abdomen while Rebecca jammed her straight into the right eye. Moments later, the awful sound it somehow produced was cut like a TV turning off, and it began cracking until everything shattering into place that littered the floor. The three of us looked at each other in disbelief. We just killed one of those things, and without it even being able to reach us. For the first time, I felt strong, triumphant. Like I was going to be the one that they should be afraid of. That was short-lived. Wait. So they killed it, and it just into pieces?
Turned to glass, yeah. Rebecca was like, right in the eye. Rebecca's a badass. She said, I don't give a... Connor's like, stomach. She said, nah, I'm going for the face. I'm like imagining Rebecca as like a 6'2" woman. Like just tall. I don't know why. I'm just thinking, I feel like she's tall.
I can see that. I mean, she went right into the eye, so I would imagine
I feel like she's like just a tall motherfucker, like just like... I'm really picturing Morticia. I'm really picturing Morticia.
Now that you said that, I too am picturing Morticia.
Every time I hear Rebecca now, that's what I'm picturing. The only form of celebration we were able to have was momentarily looks of widened eyes and smiles before the sounds returned. The footsteps, the screaming, the static. So many sets of footsteps and so much static. Rebecca gasped and Connor held his free hand up to his ear and shut his eyes tight while I backed away from the counter. In that moment of fear, I forgot about the broken window. Before I could see what was about to come through the door, I was pulled back by my hair so hard that for a second I thought my scalp was about to rip. I could only keep myself on my feet for less than 2 seconds, calling out for help before my spine slammed against the bottom frame of the window, and then I went limp just long enough to be pulled into the bedroom it was looking into and thrown across half its length, rolling across the floor.
I could hear the commotion in the kitchen the whole time. Rebecca screamed while Connor was silent, but I could hear objects being thrown into the walls and an occasional grunt that I assumed came from him. I did my best to stand up as quickly as possible, and that's when I realized my glass shard was gone. Likely, I dropped it when I was grabbed. I opened my eyes to instantly be met with the sight of the other Marielle, standing a few feet away from me with her mouth open, impossibly revealing her entire bottom row of teeth, but no tongue, and her eyes 2 different colors, just like Connor had told me. She produced the same horrifying scream, but it wasn't mixed with any static. It sounded exactly like me, but as if it was being brutally torn apart, like I was being tortured in the most awful of ways possible. She had no tongue.
Oh. I don't like that at all.
I don't either.
Could you imagine staring at an imposter of yourself with your mouth completely open, like uncannily open? Just like inhumanly open with no tongue.
No.
That's
No,
pretty
thank you.
fucking terrifying. Okay. Looking around the bedroom, I realized there was nothing I could use as a weapon. By the time I did, the other Marielle had started her charge at me again, and I screamed, barely managing to slip past her and throw myself onto the bed. I reached for the pillow, and through horrified, panicked inhales and exhales, I threw it at her, which, as you may imagine, was not very effective weapon, and I crawled back, gasping as I fell over at the other side. Standing up fast as I could, I was met with an awful sight of her crawling onto the bed like a spider. But then I was not, oh my goodness. But that was not what disturbed me the most. Her head and mouth still hanging open so painfully and eyes empty like a dark abyss. Her head was throwing itself into impossible angles, just like that thing pretending to be Connor had been doing while I was hiding. I tried to make my way to the other corner of the room, but she pounced on me, pinning me to the ground with inhuman strength. She gripped my neck and lifted me up, slamming me into the wall. And as I looked into her, parts of her skin started going black. While I was still running, I heard the sound of glass shattering through the window. When the other Mariel had pinned me, I heard Connor shouting, and a chair suddenly hit my double, and it realized... Oh, sorry. I heard Connor shouting, and a chair suddenly hit my double, and it released its grip on me. That moment allowed me to look into the kitchen and see Connor being tackled by his double and disappearing out of sight, and Rebecca.
Rebecca was held against the wall by another creature in the skin of a police officer, but her hand was raised and she was holding her glass shard still. All she had to do was drive it into its head and she would have freed herself, but that thing was too fast and stopped her arm mid-air with its own, squeezing so hard it caused her to drop the shard and scream in pain. All of this happening in less than a second, and then it dropped her arm and put its palm against her mouth. What I witnessed after that was the total disappearance of that thing's everything. It was just a totally black silhouette that resembled a human with impossibly uneven proportions, constantly swapping, but the only thing that stayed constant was the arm with which it held onto Rebecca's mouth. Its palm then moved from just covering her mouth to grabbing her entire head, and she let out a guttural scream that only got louder and louder as it tightened its grip.
Oh man, is Rebecca about to die? They introduced a whole new character and they're like, yeah, she's gonna die.
Dead.
Damn! I couldn't see anything more, so I still had the other me to deal with. Walking to the kitchen, an idea came to me. I could lure this Mariel toward the window and use its pieces of glass to shatter her. And that is what I did. I sprinted as fast as I could to the window and turned back to see she was already running for me. Pause here. I thought she was pinned to the ground.
That's so too.
Her hands were out trying to grab me, and I ducked right before she was able to and moved to the right, causing her to ram front of the window and into its frame. It was now or never. I turned around and gathered all the strength that I had left to grab the other Mariel's head. I turned around and gathered all the strength I had left to grab the other Mariel's head and slam it into the sharp piece of glass pointing right up. She was able to release one final shriek before it pierced into her left ear as she stood there frozen and silent. At that moment, I looked up to see what was happening inside the kitchen and saw that Rebecca had completely disappeared while Connor was still in the tussle with his double. I was just about to crawl through the window back to help before I was forced down on the floor by an awful throbbing pain in my ankle, hand, and now neck where the other Mariel had held me up. The pain was soon to disappear, and looked back toward the window where my double was beginning to crack. I called out for Connor one last time before she turned to pieces, and my memories ended there.
What I remember immediately after was waking up in a hospital bed with an IV going through my left hand and I was covered by a sheet. I was so exhausted I could barely produce any sound that alerted a visitor I did not know I had sitting on a chair by the bed.
Easy, Marielle.
The voice was that of a woman, and it would certainly have made me scream if I had the strength for it.
You've been out the longest out of us three. Is this Rebecca?
Yeah.
You've been out the longest out of us three.
I slowly turned my head to see Rebecca smiling at me with this expression that had something off about it, but I choked it up to condition. Nope, but I chalked it up to condition.
Rebecca? What happened? We did what we had to do, is what happened. But you were completely out of it when we came out.
I was too worried about Connor to ask what she meant by came out. I was definitely in need of a memory refresher.
Where is Connor? Is he okay? Oh yes, honey, don't worry about him. He's in a neighboring room. You two had a real struggle in there.
She then stood up, and at that moment, I could not remember how she had suddenly disappeared while we were in that place. She made her way to the door and opened it, stepping out.
I don't think this is gonna end good.
I don't think
Something's
it's
off.
Rebecca.
Something's off about Rebecca. Something's off about this whole situation. When she said you guys had a real struggle in there, Rebecca had a real struggle. She died.
She disappeared.
Yeah. You'll have to ask the nurses if you can see him, though. Wait, Rebecca.
I called out weakly.
How did we... Is it over? I'll tell you later, Marielle. Visiting time is over, and I need to feed Toby. You know, he's probably starving by now. You know how much Frenchies eat. Her dog is not named Toby.
Nope, that was Frankie.
It's Frankie. First off, that's not Rebecca.
How could Rebecca forget Frankie's name?
That is not Rebecca. That is an imposter.
Before I could question her more, she shut the door and I was left alone for the first time, completely alone and separated from Connor since he offered me his help. I was afraid for him and I wanted to see him, but at least I had Rebecca's word that he was okay. Was he okay? Is he okay?
Keep going.
I moved the covers to look at my hand and ankle. The parts where I had been marked were covered in bandages and I had no idea what was under there. And then I ran my other hand over the front of my neck. I confirmed that the case was the same with it too. I was sure that if they'd remain like that, I had a lot of explaining to do, and I wasn't sure how I was going to go about it, but I had the chance to finally rest. I wasn't about to say no to it. Not long after, a male nurse entered my room with a tray of food and smiled under his mask.
Hello, miss. I was told you were awake. You were in quite the condition when you got to you. Yeah, you were in quite the condition when we got to you. It was a stroke of luck. Your neighbors saw you before you'd lost too much blood. Blood? What happened to me?
I recalled the black marks again and ran my hand over the bandages on my neck.
The bandages are covering the black marks. You had some really deep wounds where the bandages are, and your neighbor's son saw you passed out on the driveway, bleeding. Poor kid. But he saved your life. Is Connor here? Can I see him? He was with me.
The nurse looked at me confused and scratched his head.
Ma'am, there was no one with you, and we don't have a patient by that name in the ward.
I raised my eyebrows and felt myself begin to tense.
That's impossible. He was with me. Check again, please. I was with two other people, that lady and Connor. Please, just check. Okay, ma'am. Just don't stress yourself out. Please, you really need to rest and keep yourself steady. I'll be back in just a few moments.
He smiled and nodded at me before turning around and leaving the room, but I was too nervous for pleasantries right now. I started to wonder why Rebecca was in such a rush, and why she'd lie about Connor if he wasn't there. I remember by now how she suddenly went missing while I was still inside that place, but I thought that was just how I had returned to the real world after I killed the other me. The same thing must have happened to her, but there wasn't another her, right? That's when I replayed our conversation over a few times in my head before she left, and I kept stopping at one detail in particular. Was I misremembering it, or did she get the name of her dog wrong?
Yeah, she did, because that's not Rebecca. And Connor is either dead or missing. Rebecca's definitely dead. She's been replaced.
Yeah,
Ooh.
for sure.
I'm gonna make this 2 different posts because I can't make it 2. I can't make it 1. Gotta make it part. I'm gonna post them separately. But dang, that's crazy. I liked it.
I did too. That was
a good
good.
ending. If that's the last part, what a cliffhanger. What a cliffhanger if that's the last part. But that's crazy. I knew like as soon as she like was like fine and not in a hospital bed herself, I was like, seems a little bit weird.
Yeah. But also, I don't know.
Dang, that's crazy.
So I think Rebecca got killed,
Oh yeah, she's dead. She's
and
definitely dead.
her mirror person, other self, is the one that came back. And Connor, I don't know, maybe he's with his missing car.
I don't know if Connor's dead, right? Because like he didn't die on screen, so he
No.
might be still alive.
That I want to know what happened to him.
Like we may never know. But do you think that she's in? Do you think that she's in the mirror world, or do you think that she's?
Yes, I was just about to say that. One of the comments says, "Oh no, it seems that you're still stuck in the mirror universe. This is not good. I think you need to get out of that hospital."
Yeah, I think she's in the mirror world too. I think she's still in the mirror world
too.
I definitely don't think she's. We're gonna speculate here because I don't know if there's gonna be a part 5, to be honest. But I think she's still in the mirror world. I don't think that's Rebecca. Obviously, that's not Rebecca. Her dog's name is Frankie, not fucking whatever they said.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. That's crazy.
That was good.
This story's good. I really like this author. I'm not sure if they're new to writing stories. They have a few other stories on their. No, they have one. Looks like they have one other story on their profile. Let's see.
Oh no, my daughter has an imaginary friend. That's their other story.
Yeah. That was a month ago.
Imaginary friends are one of my fears.
Really? But this author is. I like the way that they read it. They have written the story. It's because like every time there's a new part, I'm like, I want to know what's happening next. What's gonna happen next in the story? Bravo! I liked it. If that's the last part, Grace, that would be. I'm gonna be like, oh wow, that's the last one.
Yeah.
They posted 23 hours ago. Which they usually post around 8 p.m. I want to say. So I'll keep an eye out, but I really like the story. I'm very glad that they let me us read it and post it. But like if whoever's still watching, go check this author out on. If you want to read the story yourself, I've linked the story in the description. Go check them out. If you want to drop a comment on their stories or like how you liked it, definitely do that because this is good. I really like this. I like the way it's written. I like the way it flows. It's good.
Yeah.
Definitely not in the real world right now. Definitely in the real world. 100%. Rebecca probably like took her because she like passed out, right? So
I don't know. Maybe Rebecca made it out. Is they're still in the mirror world? Maybe she made it out. Nah, she's probably dead.
No,
who am I kidding?
I think she's dead.
I think so too.
I think she's dead. But I do think, I don't think Connor's dead. I think he's alive still, but like maybe he like saw her. Like maybe if there's a part 5, right? I'm just saying if there's a part 5, maybe it'll be like he'll be his perspective. Like I saw her get taken, something like that, right?
Yeah. You said you messaged the author?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've mentioned the author a few times, just about the story and everything like that, just to
Yeah.
keep up, and yeah, just keep telling me it's good story. Good story. Hopefully there's a part 5. If there's not, dang, what a cliffhanger! What a cliffhanger! I am about it. Good story. If you're watching this, you're watching this in parts because I decided that I'm going to do it in parts because it was a little bit longer than I expected. And I think it's better if I split them up anyways.
Yeah.
So, because they're different titles. But yeah, thanks for watching again. Thanks for all the subscribers. Keep watching the videos. We'll keep giving you horror stuff. They'll rank us on Spotify. I'm gonna get all of them on by tomorrow. They all should be on Spotify tomorrow because I have to detach the audio from the videos and then upload it to Spotify, so it's taking some time. But I'm halfway through it, so they'll all get posted all at the same time. But until next time, oh, and just for y'all's information, I might be doing like a short story in between with guest stars throughout the week, like a 5-minute story that I'll post. If that does well, we'll keep doing it. If not, I won't. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, I will see y'all next time. And as I always say, sleep well. It's cringy, but I'm gonna keep saying it. Bye!